Well, music's a big thing in Lord of the Rings. It's weird to think of a book being so heavily associated with music, but at a certain time in the life of the book and how people were discovering it, it got kind of wrapped up in the 1960s. And obviously the 1960s was a huge time for world music. Obviously a huge explosion in England and America at the same time.
Were you aware of all this Lord of the Rings references that was in the Led Zeppelin songs and the fantasy rock from the 70s?
Oh yeah.
What's your impression of that?
You know, a lot of heavy metal is based on sword and sorcery and, you know, riding on your steed against the great armies.
What better place for the untamed spirit of rock and roll to stake its claim? Rockers of the late 60s began placing Tolkien characters and references in their songs.
So many Zeppelin songs make reference to Mordor and ring wraiths, and like you've got the Battle of Evermore, which is a classic sort of reference to Lord of the Rings.
And Misty Mountain Hop.
Yep.
Heavy metal and maybe even rock and roll, for some reason, lends itself to that fantasy-based phenomenon. You know, it's that kind of dirty kind of clanking metal. It just goes well with crashing drums and you know, guitar licks. So it's a nice little marriage.
God bless Lemmy. The lead singer of Motorhead wants to be in our movie and is a huge Tolkien fan. Lemmy's a character, and he's also a very smart guy and really had some great insight.
We weren't cynical yet, you know. I mean, I was as cynical as it gets probably, and I wasn't cynical at all, you know. I mean, we believed in something that nobody believes in now. We believed in the inherent goodness of other people.
People like Geddy Lee, who, you know, he went out of his way to be nice to us, which was something that, as an indie filmmaker, you need that.
What I remember of the Rankin and Bass songs, they were very kind of homely, they were very sweet, they were very kind of folky. What I think was a really cool idea was taking these songs that have had an influence on people when they've watched, you know, the film, and bringing them into a modern day kind of environment. I was privy to a little bit of what World Without Sundays were doing because they're friends of mine, and heard the original, and then when I went into the rehearsal studio, I didn't think they were playing the same song, you know. I was like, well, when are you going to play Where There's a Whip? And they were like, well, we were halfway through it when you walked in. So, you know, to hear them take something and it be completely different was a great thing, and that's what you see on the film. Robin DiMaggio, who scored the film, had a very difficult task of creating new and original music for different eras in time.
The hardest thing to do is a replica of the eras of music. And I started seeing a few of the scenes, and it just had such drama to it. We really went through the 60s and 70s and finding, you know, the moments.
Robin has been working in the rock industry for a long time. You name it, he's worked with them.
Paul Simon, Herbie Hancock, David Bowie.
He can write anything because he can play anything.
Here's a studio where, you know, Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr., everybody else went in there and did their stuff, you know, and recorded historical records. Even to today, Green Day. And it's great. It's a big room. You can play loud rock and roll. You can tighten the room down and make it more of like a very small club jazz setup, or you can make a string section appear and do, you know, 64-piece orchestra.
And I have a musical background, so I can talk music, which is good.
She really knew what she wanted. So it wasn't like I was working with somebody who had no concept. She came into the tempo, right down to the tempo. So yeah, I sat down behind the piano, but I always had the rhythm concept of what I wanted. So if a break would happen, I knew where it was at.
Like, because the way he would work, he'd be like, I'm going to do it like this. Ba ba da ba da ba da. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's great. That's just what I was seeing. Or I'd be like, no, a little more this way.
Go, mute the strings. Do the strum with the muted string and do that for like 8 bars. You gotta remember, I have experience with movies and TV shows and soundtracks. I've been playing on them for so many years. So watching the greats, John Williams, James Horner, James Newton Howard, Bill Conti, Ennio Morricone, people I've worked with over the years, I got to see how it happens.
The one track that I just really am nuts over is the jazz one, because I'm a big jazz fan. He's just such a, a staid and a boring personality.
Great. Go ahead.
You try to bring him up a little bit. You try to bring him out of his little shell.
I think the mojo that Carlene brought to the table conquered me into becoming a real prick. No, I'm just kidding.
Cracking a joke. Trying to get him ready. Gee.
Tell me, what is it that you really like about The Lord of the Rings?
All the I got.
Oh, God.